Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow Amazon Prime Video subscribers. Welcome back to the next, technically, and hopefully final part of my Invincible Season 2 debacle, my opinions, my reviewing. So, I saw and I finished the second part of Invincible Season 2. I originally did not know if I was going to make this review or opinionated video, but here I am. I felt it was my due diligence and duty to do it after I reviewed the first half of Season 2. So, a little bit of a recap. Obviously, if you haven't seen my my opinions of Season 2, the first part, the first 4 episodes, you should definitely go look at that because I'm going to be referencing that a little bit. Excuse me. And as always, light spoilers incoming for the show. Nothing crazy though. But for those of you who don't know somehow, some way, season 2 of Invincible came with a little bit of a storied mess. So season 1 came on the scene, really did good. I really enjoyed it. A lot of other people really enjoyed it. And, it really shocked people with what happened with Omniman being Omniman, the Viltrumites, the whole story of Superman being evil. This whole idea of superheroes becoming evil has been like a very big trope recently, especially with the other show like The Boys coming out and being so popular. And then stuff like, I'm trying to think what else. It's basically like the whole zombies era we had. Like there was a whole era where all these zombie shows were coming out, like The Walking Dead, and then just a bunch and bunch more of like apocalyptic shows because that's what was like the big meta at that time. And now it seems to be superheroes being not so super. So either way, season 1 of Invincible, very very good, amazing season. A lot of people, me included, were looking forward to season 2. And, like I said probably in the first review, and I say probably because I don't fully remember, but the main issue now with a lot of streaming services is number one, they're fragmented. You used to get everything on Netflix, now you get everywhere else. And Netflix kind of proved that, yeah, giving stuff to people all at once is good for the people, but it's not good for the long term show and for everything else. Because when you release stuff weekly, things have more time to fester, things can be marketed more. It's generally better for everyone but the consumer, and you can argue maybe trip down to the consumer as well. It honestly really, really depends. So the main issue comes in is now what places have decided to do, and this is an overarching issue. It's not just Invincible that does this, but the overarching issue is now they're selectively holding content similar to the gaming industry, where they're just not going to give it to you off rip. So Invincible season 2 gave us the first half many months ago, and then the second half sort of recently, even though I believe both were done, just to kind of extend the life cycle of it for some reason. As far as I know, that's the reasoning. So, season 1, or sorry, the first part of season 2, as I've reviewed before, I think was absolute dog shit ass. I don't know what the fuck was going on in it, and I don't know how my perception might have changed if I saw the whole season all at once, if I just waited for it all to be out, or if we saw it weekly. But I will just say that the first like 4 episodes of this show really sucked fucking wiener. Like they really, really did. I feel like nothing happened. It was mostly all set up. Some good stuff did happen, especially with Alan the Alien, but not a lot of stuff happened that was really cool or really interesting. It was more just wasting time and boring. Now we get to the second part of season 2. And I gotta say, for the most part, they did a complete 180. It honestly feels from where we left off in the first part of season 2, it was the biggest, not biggest, but it was a pretty big cliffhanger. We're like, oh shit, what's going on? And season 2, episode 5 just hits the ground running and makes it extremely, extremely powerful. They just go and they hit you with action, adventure, great story, and they keep this up for a while. I'm gonna be honest, they really, really do. Like there's this whole thing on Mars with aliens that they deal with, and there's a lot of actual villains that they deal with that you're like, oh shit. Now, one major issue with this is like, and this is kind of, I think, attributed to a little bit of bad storytelling, is do things actually matter? And the show does a good job of making you think they do, especially since season 1. Season 1, the biggest thing that mattered was the whole globe of Guardians got fucking axed by Omni-Man himself. And for the most part, that stayed true, aside from obviously the Immortal. But in every other aspect, the season, at least to me, really made me question, like, do things actually matter from what are being done? And even further than that, is this like a hit popular anime called Fairy Tale where no one really is at odds with death? But I'm not gonna say any more with that. But let's just say that's something that at first I really liked, but as time went on, I was like, okay, did all this stuff really matter? And to me, it's not a big deal because they did it very, very well. Where it's like you're wondering which characters are really safe and which aren't. Obviously, the main characters like Mark and Omni-Man are, as much as you want to think they're not, because they're the main characters. But how much plot armor is there for certain characters? And that's something that kind of became a pain point as the show went on in the second half of season two. But aside from that, right, it had great action, great storytelling. It still had more setup. They're obviously setting up for more seasons, but they gave us finally what I've been wanting since the first half, which is just some fucking content. Now, other people, other content creators, I saw their reviews of Invincible season two, and they're stroking this shit, and I'm like, I don't understand how they got through the first half of the season and like weren't falling asleep. But regardless, the second half of season two really filled with action. The only other thing that I have to say that's a big negative is the final episode of season two. We really started strong and we kept going strong, but the main issue that happened, the main issue that occurred, was I felt like the final villain, especially comparing it to season one, and there's another problem with this that is going to come after. There's another issue I had with just the entirety of season two in general. But the main villain, the main big bad fight, the season finale, the ender, as you would say, I honestly feel was quite disappointing. Like, we knew it was coming, they kind of planted the seeds for it, but once we actually see it and we see what it is and who it is and how it goes out, it really just felt not really serious. It was more of like posing a question for Mark, because obviously the final fight is with Mark again. He's the main character. But this isn't really a good fight per se. It's more of just like a revelation that Mark has to go through that really pushes him, not really physically per se. It's more just mentally, and it basically asks the question. It puts doubt into Mark's mind. It causes character development and growth, sure, but I just felt like the final fight wasn't necessarily a fight. It was kind of weak. Like if they started off the season with this, I think it would have been way better. Now, how did they do that? I don't know. If they did it even in the midpoint of the season, it would have been better. I think putting it at the end here and having us sit with this until we get a new season, God knows when, and let's see if they'll split that one up. I feel like was just really, really ass. The final guy was alright, but it's just like it really just is not a good fight. Like I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's just really, really not a good fight. It honestly isn't. It's more just cock teasing you. It's tickling your balls a little bit, and then it's coming back and like slapping it once, and you like that, but then it doesn't slap it again. It just tickles it, and then it's over. And you're like, wow, I wanted more, and this is it. This is what I get in the finale, and it was really, really disappointing to me. Now, aside from the final fight being kind of disappointing, I would say all other aspects of the fights in all the second half of season two are amazing. I think they're really fucking good. There's some really good fights, especially with some of the Viltrumites that we see come to Earth, especially a lovely lady. But it's really sad that like the ending of the season I feel like was the weakest part, especially when they really kicked it off and kept up the energy really, really well. It's really stupid. But either way, that goes into my next issue with season two in its entirety. Season one, we love Omni-Man. We like Omni-Man. We like Mark. We like the other characters, and the other characters definitely do get a lot of development in season two. But the main issue that I have is we barely get Omni-Man in season one, or sorry, in season two here. Season one, we get a lot of him. Season two, we barely get any. And in season two, we get Omni-Man in the final episode, right, of the first half, in episode four. After that, we see glimpses and pieces of him, and then in season two, the second part, we see him a little bit in the final episode, and that's it. And it's like Omni-Man was barely here; he barely did anything. It was just kind of like if you're an Omni-Man fan after season one, you're kind of just starving for water in season two here. And it's like overall, we really like Omni-Man. Omni-Man is a big drawer, and I understand they're trying to like have the show maybe stand on its own with the other characters, and they definitely are pushing towards that in a really good way. But the main issue is we want to see more Omni-Man, and it felt like we were kids not eating our dinner, and we were forced to eat like our vegetables, and we just didn't get dessert. It's like, what the fuck is this? where's my Omni-Man? I wanted more, and I was severely disappointed that Omni-Man was not as prevalent in the story as I would have liked him to be. Now, again, maybe this is just more setup. The biggest thing with Season 2, especially in the first half, was setup. Again, second half, some setup, especially for certain people like Omni-Man. But overall, not bad. It did have its issues. I don't think it was as good as necessarily Season 1, even though there was, I think, a bigger ramp up in the second half of the season, especially with the fights. I was like, the fights are kind of going pretty good. And that's not to say that it was completely terrible in the first half. The first half is decent as well. But overall, I would say if they just did the same shit they did with the second half of the second half of the season was almost like as good as season 1. But overall, it just wasn't. And the fact that it's localized to the second half is really, really sad. But either way, overall, I did enjoy it. Maybe, and this is the hardest thing to say because I don't know and I can't go back and do it because I've already watched it. But if this came out all at once and I was able to watch it all the way through, would I have felt differently? I honestly think maybe. I think leaving us with a wet fart with the midway point of season 2 here was kind of ass. And again, leaving us with a wet fart at the end of season 2 is also a little bit ass. Not as wet as what they did in the first half of the season, but still pretty fucking lousy. But overall, it's, I think, slightly worse. I really hope this isn't the way the show goes, where it just goes down and down and down over time, as most shows do. They peak on their release, and then they just get worse the longer they're alive. Rick and Morty. But, you know, I guess we'll see. But overall, it wasn't a terrible watch. It was pretty good. If you like Invincible, you're definitely going to like it. The second half of the show really, really does, like, bring it back and carry what the travesty was for, like, the first half of season 1. Or, sorry, goddammit, season 2. But overall, it was whatever. If I had to rate it, I would definitely rate it like probably like a solid 7 Omnimans out of 10 for sure. I don't think I could give it any higher than that, just because the first half, like I said, is just eh. The second half is good except for the ending. But yeah, pretty much that's it. 7 out of 10 Omnis. Hope everyone enjoyed. If you want to see more of me, watch me at Twitch TV /Tecnics channel. Eee!